The $7.4 billion settlement with Purdue Pharma was approved by a federal judge today. Now,
in 1996, a pharmaceutical company launched a painkiller they claimed was virtually non-addictive. By 2017, that drug had contributed to over 200,000 American deaths. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. Internal documents prove that Purdue Pharma knew OxyContin was highly addictive before they ever sold a single pill. Emails between executives reveal they discussed the street value of their drug. Sales training materials taught representatives how to overcome doctors' concerns about addiction. Marketing budgets allocated millions specifically to target the most vulnerable patients. Today, we're examining the documented evidence that proves the opioid crisis wasn't a tragedy. It was a business plan. Every fact you're about to hear comes directly from court documents, congressional testimony, and Purdue Pharma's own internal records. This is the story of how one family's greed killed more Americans than the Vietnam War. Chapter number 1. Introduction. The opioid epidemic has claimed over 500,000 American lives since 1999. To put that in perspective, that's more deaths than World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War combined. At the center of this catastrophe stands one company, Purdue Pharma, and one family, the Sacklers, who owned it. For decades, the Sackler family maintained they were philanthropists, donating millions to museums and universities. Their name appeared on wings of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Harvard University, and the Louvre, but court documents unsealed in 2019 revealed a different story. They were drug dealers in business suits. What makes this case unique is the paper trail. Unlike most corporate scandals where executives claim plausible deniability, Purdue Pharma's crimes are documented. These documents reveal a systematic, deliberate campaign to create addiction. Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey stated in her 2019 lawsuit, Purdue Pharma and the Sacklers chose profits over people. They knew OxyContin was addictive. Today, we're walking through the documented evidence year by year, showing exactly how Purdue Pharma engineered the opioid crisis. Chapter 2. The Origin. Creating OxyContin. Our story begins in the early 1990s when Purdue Pharma was searching for their next blockbuster drug, oxycodone. The active ingredient in OxyContin wasn't new. It had existed since 1916 and was known to be highly addictive. But Purdue developed a controlled-release formula that delivered the drug slowly over 12 hours. Here's where the deception started. In their 1995 FDA application, Purdue claimed this slow-release formula would make OxyContin less addictive than other opioids. The FDA approval letter from December 1995 included a crucial label statement that Purdue would later exploit. The controlled-release formula was believed to reduce abuse potential. But Purdue documents from this same period tell a different story. A 1995 memo from Purdue's medical director, Dr. J. David Haddix, acknowledged that the controlled-release mechanism could be easily defeated by crushing the pills. Another document from February 1996, 2 months before OxyContin launched, showed Purdue scientists knew that blood concentration levels of the drug created euphoria and addiction risk. Yet when OxyContin launched in May 1996, Purdue's marketing materials claimed it had less abuse potential and was safer than other opioids. The launch strategy targeted primary care physicians rather than specialists. Why? Because primary care doctors had less training in pain management and were easier to influence. A 1996 marketing memo stated, "Primary care physicians represent the largest prescribing opportunity. They are less skeptical about opioid risks and more responsive to educational initiatives." Purdue created an aggressive bonus structure for sales representatives based on prescription volume. Sales reps could earn bonuses of $25,000 to $240,000 annually on top of base salary, based on how many prescriptions their assigned doctors wrote. A 1996 sales training manual, entered into evidence in multiple lawsuits, explicitly instructed representatives to downplay addiction risks. One section stated, "Addiction is rare when patients use opioids for pain management." This wasn't true. Purdue had no scientific evidence to support this claim, but it became the foundation of their entire sales strategy. Chapter 3: The Deceptive Marketing Campaign. Between 1996 and 2001, Purdue spent over $200 million marketing OxyContin, but this wasn't ordinary pharmaceutical marketing, rather a multi-pronged strategy designed to change how American doctors thought about prescribing opioids. Strategy 1: The Pain Movement. Purdue funded organizations and advocacy groups that promoted treating pain more aggressively with opioids. Court documents show Purdue gave millions to groups like the American Pain Society and the Federation of State Medical Boards. A 1999 budget document allocated $1.4 million to pain advocacy and professional society support. These organizations then produced guidelines encouraging opioid use that aligned with Purdue's interests. Strategy 2: The Speaker Program. Purdue paid doctors to speak at conferences and dinners, promoting OxyContin to other physicians. Between 1996 and 2001, Purdue sponsored over 20,000 educational programs and recruited over 5,000 physician speakers. Strategy 3: The Sales Representative Blitz. By 2001, Purdue employed nearly 1,000 sales representatives, twice the industry average for a single drug. The key points they were trained to use during their conversation with the doctors were: less than 1% of patients become addicted. Pain is undertreated in America. Concerns about addiction are outdated. Higher doses are often necessary for pain relief. None of these claims were supported by scientific evidence. Purdue knew this, but continued using these talking points. Strategy 4: Targeting high prescribers. Purdue deliberately targeted doctors who prescribed the most opioids. A 2001 internal memo describes a strategy called Region Zero, identifying and focusing on the highest prescribing doctors in each territory. When some of these high prescribers turned out to be running pill mills, illegitimate clinics that distributed opioids with minimal medical justification, Purdue continued targeting them. Purdue knew OxyContin didn't last 12 hours for many patients. A 1996 clinical study showed that the drug wore off after 8 to 10 hours for significant numbers of patients. But Purdue's entire marketing strategy was built on the 12-hour claim. Longer duration meant fewer pills, which justified premium pricing and differentiated OxyContin from competitors. When doctors reported patients experiencing withdrawal symptoms before 12 hours, Purdue instructed sales reps to recommend increasing the dose rather than increasing frequency. A 1998 email from a regional sales manager states, "If patients are experiencing symptoms before 12 hours, educate physicians on dose escalation rather than adjusting the schedule." This approach created two problems: higher doses increased addiction risk, and withdrawal symptoms between doses created a cycle of dependence. Chapter 4: The Warning Signs Ignored. By 2000, evidence of an emerging opioid crisis was impossible to ignore, and Purdue Pharma saw it coming. In 2001, Purdue's Market Research Division analyzed prescription data from eastern Kentucky, where OxyContin use had exploded, making unusual patterns. Single doctors writing 1,500 plus OxyContin prescriptions monthly. Patients receiving prescriptions from multiple doctors. High concentrations of prescriptions in low-income areas. A 2001 memo acknowledged prescription patterns in Kentucky and West Virginia suggest diversion and abuse. But rather than alerting authorities or limiting supply, Purdue increased marketing efforts in these regions. Court documents show sales representative bonuses in Kentucky increased 300% between 2000 and 2002. Even as abuse indicators multiplied. By 2003, Purdue's own surveillance system had logged thousands of reports of OxyContin addiction, abuse, and deaths. Documents show these reports were compiled in quarterly summaries sent to executives. A March 2003 surveillance report noted reports of addiction and abuse continue to increase. Total adverse events up 47% from previous quarter. The response from management: continue aggressive marketing. In 2001, the Drug Enforcement Administration contacted Purdue about suspicious OxyContin prescribing patterns. Instead of reformulating the drug or restricting distribution, Purdue's strategy was to deflect blame to bad doctors and drug abusers, rather than acknowledging drugs' addictive properties. Purdue's legal counsel stated, "Our position must be that OxyContin is safe when used as directed. Problems arise from misuse, not from the product itself." This became Purdue's public relations strategy. Blame everyone except themselves. Purdue was developing an abuse deterrent formulation that would be harder to crush and inject, but executives deliberately delayed launching this reformulation because the existing formulation was so profitable. A 2004 email from Richard Sackler, then president of Purdue, discusses the reformulation. "We don't want to create the impression that the current formulation has problems. Delay launch until necessary." The abuse deterrent version wasn't launched until 2010, 8 years after Purdue knew it was possible. During that delay, tens of thousands of Americans died. Chapter 5, the criminal plea. In 2007, Purdue Pharma faced their first major legal reckoning. The U.S. Attorney for Western Virginia brought federal charges for misbranding OxyContin. On May 10, 2007, Purdue Pharma pleaded guilty to felony misbranding charges and agreed to pay $634 million in fines. 3 executives, Michael Friedman, CEO, Howard Udell, Chief Legal Officer, and Paul Goldenheim, Chief Scientific Officer, pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges. The plea agreement included detailed findings about Purdue's deceptive marketing. The court document states that Purdue fraudulently marketed OxyContin by falsely claiming that it was less addictive, less subject to abuse, and less likely to cause withdrawal than other pain medications. This was a federal court explicitly finding that Purdue had lied about their drug's addictive properties. You might think this would end the story. It didn't. Court filings from the 2019 Massachusetts lawsuit revealed that between 2008 and 2018, the Sacklers withdrew approximately $10.7 billion from Purdue Pharma through various mechanisms. Prosecutors argued these transfers were designed to shield family wealth from future liability, essentially draining the company while leaving it to face lawsuits. A 2009 sales training manual still instructed representatives to emphasize that addiction was rare in pain patients, the same claim that led to the 2007 conviction. Between 2007 and 2017, Purdue spent another $700 million on marketing OxyContin. During this period, over 200,000 Americans died from prescription opioid overdoses. Chapter 6, the pattern of deception. What makes the Purdue case unique isn't just that they sold an addictive drug. It's the documented pattern of deception that continued even after they were caught. Documents from multiple state lawsuits reveal Purdue-funded studies designed to produce favorable results about OxyContin's safety. A 2013 study published in a pain management journal concluded that OxyContin addiction rates were low. Court documents later revealed Purdue had funded the study, helped design the methodology, and had editorial control over the findings, none of which was disclosed in the publication. Between 2006 and 2015, Purdue spent over $8 million on federal and state lobbying efforts. Perhaps most disturbing are documents showing Purdue specifically targeted vulnerable populations. A 2012 market analysis identified high-opportunity patient segments, including workers' compensation patients, chronic pain patients in Medicaid, veterans with service-related injuries. These populations were targeted because they were more likely to receive long-term opioid prescriptions with less scrutiny. Sackler family members stood firm to their stance. Richard Sackler, while discussing media coverage of the opioid epidemic, stated, "We need to hammer on the abusers in every way possible. They are the culprits and the problem." This statement was on air in 2016, after over 200,000 Americans had died, after Purdue's 2007 guilty plea, and after overwhelming evidence that Purdue's marketing had driven the crisis. The Sacklers were still blaming victims. Chapter 7, the bankruptcy scheme. In September 2019, Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy protection, but it was a legal strategy rather than actual money problem. Financial records filed with the bankruptcy court showed Purdue was still profitable in 2019. The bankruptcy was designed to halt thousands of lawsuits and force a settlement that would protect the Sackler family's wealth. The proposed bankruptcy plan, filed in 2020, included Purdue would dissolve and reform as a public benefit company. The Sacklers would contribute $4.5 billion over 9 years. In exchange, the Sacklers would receive complete immunity from all current and future opioid-related lawsuits. Remember, court documents showed the Sacklers had already withdrawn over $10 billion from Purdue. They were offering to return less than half while gaining complete legal immunity. In 2021, a federal judge approved the bankruptcy plan, including Sackler immunity. But in 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court agreed to review whether bankruptcy law could be used this way. Documents filed in these cases revealed just how carefully the Sacklers had planned to protect their wealth while leaving Purdue to face liability. The documented evidence is overwhelming. Purdue Pharma knew OxyContin was highly addictive. They knew it was being abused. They knew people were dying, and they continued marketing it aggressively because it was profitable. This wasn't corporate negligence. This wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate choice prioritizing profits over human lives. Over 500,000 Americans have died in the opioid epidemic. While multiple factors contributed, court documents establish that Purdue Pharma's deceptive marketing was a primary driver of the crisis. The Sackler family, who owned Purdue, extracted over $10 billion, while their company's product killed hundreds of thousands. They gave millions to museums and universities, putting their name on buildings where people sought culture and education. But their true legacy is documented in court records, internal emails, and death certificates. Every detail we discussed today is publicly available through court filings. This isn't speculation. It's evidence that proves one of the greatest corporate crimes in American history. The opioid crisis was planned. The documents prove it, and we must never forget.